So I'm back, and this time I'm going to ruin everything you think about bonding products. Well, hopefully not everything. And keep in mind that what I'm saying here is about the evidence for these products, not that these are good or bad products. I haven't used most of these products because my hair doesn't need them. They're primarily formulated for damaged hair. So don't give up these products because of this video. So today I'm going to tell you about the latest bonding product that I tried out. As you can see, it comes in this nice little spray bottle, and all you have to do is spray it on your hair. That hair was curly before, and now it looks totally different. So what
Wow.
this product does is it breaks bonds and then it reforms them. And these are hydrogen bonds. So you might be asking, what is this amazing product? What if I told you it's literally water, H2O, like tap water? Yep, every time you use water on your hair, you're breaking and reforming hydrogen bonds. So is water a bond building product? What is a bond building product? So as I said in the beginning, bonds are literally everywhere. And bonding products as a class became exciting not because they formed bonds, but because of the type of bonds they formed and where they formed them. So where they formed them, inside the hair's cortex, not on the cuticle, inside the hair. And that's actually quite hard because a lot of ingredients can't get inside the hair. They're too big or they have other obstacles. So that is impressive. They also are impressive because they form a strong type of bond that is broken on a lot of chemical processing like perming or bleaching, that sort of thing. So that's the original bonding products, like think K18, Olaplex, that sort of thing. But because bonding is literally everywhere, other companies were like, oh yeah, bonding is literally everywhere. I can just make a bonding product out of ingredients I already have. So I'm going to tell you the difference between those different products and which ones, if there's any evidence behind them. So Dr. Paul Cornwell from the Tri-Princeton Institute, which is a hair research institute, he had 3 criteria for what would prove a bonding product actually does what it says. The first one is, as I said, penetration. It needs to actually get into the cortex. It has to be small enough and it has to show that it's actually there. The second is it needs to show it's actually forming the bonds it says it forms. And that is pretty hard to prove, apparently. And a lot of times there is some indirect evidence, but it's really rare to find really good evidence for this. And third, none of this matters if it doesn't make hair better. So it has to show that it actually makes hair better in a way that it would be if you improved the bonds. So let's talk about the original bond builders and why they are different and special. So there's tons of bonds all over, but these bonds that we care about for these strong bond builders are disulfide bonds. These are very strong, very durable, hard to break, but once they're broken, it's bad. It affects the structure a lot. So these disulfide strong bond builders, what they do is they say that kind of patching up these disulfide bonds. It's not going to be the same as before. It's not literally making them like new, but it's pretty durable if it does what it says, and pretty impressive. But unfortunately, none of these products have really met that standard of criteria. So Olaplex, for example, and K18, they have probably the best evidence of all of the strong bond builders, but that's not that good. So they have internal tests, which on our standard of evidence is pretty low. And then they have these peer-reviewed studies that have used these products. And these studies have found some indirect evidence that both K18 and Olaplex are forming these disulfide bonds, but it's indirect evidence. Improvement, peer-reviewed study, it showed improvement in the hair's tensile strength. And that's all we have. We don't have any evidence that they're actually in the hair cortex, although I guess it's indirect evidence, but there's no pictures of it in the cortex like there are for some other things that we'll talk about later. So the evidence for these is kind of bad. If they do what they say they do, it's very impressive, but they're not really proving it. They kind of just don't have to. I mean, nobody, except for maybe me, is demanding hey, prove you're actually doing a disulfide bond. And one thing that kind of throws some doubt on them is Olaplex does have another peer-reviewed study, not done by them, done by independent researchers that showed no evidence it was forming disulfide bonds. So it's doing something, but it maybe not be doing what it's saying it's doing. So Olaplex and K18 are slightly different. Olaplex uses more of an acidic system that it kind of think about it repairing this way. And then K18 kind of patches it up a little better. It's more of a peptide system. Then we have Epres, which is created by one of the guys who created Olaplex, and there's not that much information about how it works scientifically, but hypothetically, it should be like a slow release Olaplex. Olaplex also introduced its own like kind of peptide bonder, and it's specifically targeting the curly-haired people, but they haven't really published anything on it. So, and this is a salon-only system. Then there is living proof. There's not that much evidence for this one either. There's some peer-reviewed evidence on the active, but it uses a really very different system. So that's the thing about these strong bond builders. If they do what they say they do, they're impressive. The evidence is bad. But I suppose, like, if your hair is really, really, really damaged, and I guess the ones I would pick is maybe I would pick like K18, because hypothetically it should be stronger bonds. If I wanted to add another one, I do one of the acidic, so I do like a peptide one and an acidic one. But my hair hasn't been that damaged. All right, now we're gonna get to the bond builders that are just like, They have more proof behind them, but what they do is not that impressive. And there's a lot of different ways they work. They can add more bonds, they're weaker bonds, but they're not as weak as the bonds I showed you when I was doing wetting my hair. They may last a couple of washes maybe, I don't know. They're not as strong. Meh. That's cool. It does improve the hair, hypothetically, though. Another thing some of them can do is chelate, and that's kind of indirectly helping bonding, because chelation means it's removing these metal ions that we can get in our hair from hard water. And these can be very damaging to hair. They can actually just sit in your hair and like make the bonding worse and also like accelerate damage. So it's good to get rid of them. All right, this one, I wasn't sure whether to tell y'all this because I'm sure some people will take this and run with it. But some of these can discourage water from hanging out in the cortex. And everyone's like, oh, then they're dehydrating hair. No, this is like, you don't want too much water hanging out in your hair. You don't want too little water either. But I have seen some people that know this, but don't know a lot about hair research, try to say that they think that citric acid or one of these weak bond builders like ruin their hair. And I have not seen anyone who I respect as a hair scientist or cosmetic scientist say that that is possible. But within this less impressive bonding product area, we have some products that actually have met that gold standard, well, at least with one peer-reviewed paper, and that is Pantene and their ingredient panthenol, which is in their Pro-V complex. And they published a paper just this year that shows through like nuclear imaging that it is definitely inside the cortex. Also that it definitely forms the bonds, well, almost definitely forms the bonds it says it does, even though they're not that exciting bonds. And that it improves the hair. So it's meeting those standards, even if they're not that impressive. It's probably pretty good for your hair. I use their products, so maybe I'm biased. The rest of the products on the market are usually like, they're either one of two things, which are kind of similar to the things in the disulfide bonders, but more pathetic. They're either amino acid proteins and peptides, or they're acids, polycarbonylactic. I know amino acid is acid, just disbelief, like the acids you find in lemon. And the evidence for these as bonding ingredients is kind of mid, but not completely absent. I mean, there's a lot of peer-reviewed research, particularly on like citric acid. And I guess if I had to pick one of these products, I'd probably pick the Garnier one, which I can't find anywhere. Maybe it's gotten too popular because it has like multiple of these actives. It has the amino acids, the peptides, and citric acid. So, you know, if I'm gonna bet on things, I'm gonna go for that one. And these products are more like multi-purpose. If you have like mild to moderate damage, they're not gonna hurt your hair and they might help your hair, especially if you have like hard water and you're using one of the more acidic ones that can chelate. So that's the one I go for if I was going for a cheap one. If my hair was totally fried and I had the money, I would go for K18 and then maybe something like Olaplex or Epres. I do sometimes miss frying my hair. Man, I really loved having split dye hair. It was so good for Halloween too. Be Cruella de Vil, but it was kind of expensive. Anyway, this is about bonds. Let me know if you have any questions because I read a lot about bonds and I don't want it to go to waste.